Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report Podcast. I am your host, John Ledyard, along with my esteemed fellow colleague and fellow host, Mark Cook. Mark, how are you this evening?
You know, I've been doing this for like 4 years. I've never called myself a host. I've noticed that you do that. I just intro the podcast. We're all hosts, man. We're all part of the, I don't like to single myself out, John.
The listeners, you are also hosts, and completing our trio of hosts is Tashan Reed today. The Athletic, he covers the Las Vegas Raiders, for the Athletic. Only for about 6 months now, Tashan?
Yeah, man. This is my 6th month. I started April.
Yeah,
when everything started going crazy here. So it's been a wild ride, and it got even wilder this week.
I was going to say, you're like a grizzled veteran in the field already based on everything you've had to deal with so far this crazy offseason and then crazy season. And we'll get to some of those specifics in a little bit too. But first, I know Mark will get mad at me if I don't mention this. You covered Florida State for a while. You're only 24 years old? I mean, you're like super young, right?
Yeah, 24.
24. So you're breaking into this thing at a high level early on, which is awesome. And I'd love to get to some of your story too. But I know that you covered Florida State for a while, and Mark, obviously a huge Seminoles fan. So I know he's probably got one or two things you might want to send your way and maybe get some inside scoop at some point here.
First of all, I just want to say, man, I really enjoyed your coverage. I thought it was really good, unbiased stuff. I always said that I could never, and I know you went to Missouri, but I could never cover Florida State as a job, because then you lose your fandom, right? You lose, your passion for it. It becomes a job. I mean, I grew up watching the Buccaneers since I was a kid, since 1977 in their second season. But once I started full-time in 2011, it becomes a job. I mean, I don't have time to get mad, happy, anything. You just work, and you spend all week working, covering a team. So I could never do what you did. So I really enjoyed your coverage, man. I thought it was really good. I know you took a lot of flack from some Seminole fans, but that's part of the deal. But I got to imagine a little bit different from living in Tallahassee and living in Las Vegas. Just a little bit of a change, right?
Yeah, man. It's a slight change. I think I hadn't been to Las Vegas before I moved here, just like I hadn't been to Florida before I took the Florida State job. So both, I just kind of jumped into kind of unknown territory with both of those. Yeah. It's obviously Vegas isn't quite where Vegas would normally be with the pandemic and everything, but even still, the first day I got here, I'm used to heat, obviously being in Florida, that's part of the bag. But when I got here, it was 110, 0% humidity.
Jeez.
I got out, the breeze was blowing and it was hot everywhere. I'm like, yeah, what is this? So, yeah, it's been a wild acclimation last few months.
Yeah.
Well, what do you miss more about Tallahassee, Whataburger or Guthrie's? I mean, those are two classic.
I was never really a Whataburger guy. I tried it, but it didn't hit with me. I think Guthrie's was a little bit better. Chicken, fried chicken, that kind of stuff. It's hard to mess up with me. So I went there more. So I had to give them a nod.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's fair. When we go to Mobile, there's a Whataburger in Mobile. There's not any around here in Central Florida that I know of, because if I did, I would probably be 450 pounds. But anyway, when I was a kid, there were Whataburgers, but they've all kind of disappeared around here. But anyway, people don't care about Whataburger or Guthrie's right now. They want to talk.
They
about
do care about this
game.
Bucs-Raiders, though. Is this game going to happen, guys? That's the first thing we got to talk about. I mean, today was kind of a whirlwind of breaking news. I know, Tashan, you were right in the middle of it. We were kind of reacting to it as everything kind of came out. It's like, okay, the Raiders held the offensive line and Jonathan Abram out of practice again. And okay, the Raiders are putting all of them on the reserve COVID list, because they've all been deemed high risk. And, okay, this game's getting moved. It was Sunday night, and now it's going to be Sunday afternoon, 4:05 Eastern time. The game has been moved to. And so all of this is kind of happening. I'm literally writing the stories and then rewriting portions as these things come out. And Tashan, I know you're kind of boots on the ground there with the Raiders, but what is kind of going on in with the Raiders this offseason. I know there's been an incident that you were at with Darren Waller's fundraiser, where players were unmasked there, and that's kind of what started it. And then that was a while ago, though, and now it seems like this is a completely separate thing almost. But now the NFL investigating the NFLPA investigating where they wearing masks in the hallway, player interactions and things like that. Was Trent Brown wearing his tracking device? Just kind of, if you can, fill us in on kind of what's going on the Raiders side of things and where the whole organization is at right now as we record this and are live on a Thursday for fans.
Yeah, I think as you said, obviously they had some issues earlier in the season with John Gruden not properly wearing his mask on the sideline. He got fined a couple $100,000 for that. After the game, they were also fined for having somebody unauthorized into a locker room that they weren't supposed to have. And then shortly after that, at Darren Waller's fundraiser event that was for his foundation to combat addiction, several players for Waller and quarterback Derek Carr and a few others included who were pictured and seen not wearing their mask there, and they were all fined as well. And so they had been dinged up a few times for this kind of stuff prior, but and going into the bye week, obviously, I feel like any team in the league, you're going to be a little bit nervous right now, even though guys aren't leaving their host cities. You just have that much time away from the facility, things can start to happen. And coming back from it, I mean, on Monday they had cornerback Damon Arnett. He was placed on the COVID list. He was already on injured reserve, but that Monday when he was put on the list, you figure, okay, they're practicing Monday. None of these guys are positive. It seems like they made it through the bye week relatively okay.
Yeah.
And then Tuesday morning it comes out that Trent Brown was being, placed on the COVID list. Or Wednesday morning, my apologies. The Tuesday they had off for practice, but they get tested every day regardless of whether they practice or not at their facility in Henderson. And so given that Brown had practiced with the team on Monday and tested positive or he got his positive test Wednesday morning, obviously that drew up a lot of red flags. I was a little bit surprised going there to see practice still going on as usual Wednesday, but going into the facility, you quickly notice at practice, hey, there's, not everybody's here, and
yeah.
I mean, there were some guys over there Monday that all of a sudden were missing, and obviously it ended up being the entire starting offensive line, 4 other players, Colton Miller, Denzel Good, Gabe Jackson, Rodney Hudson, and safety John Abram were all held out because of contact tracing protocol. They were deemed to be high-risk individuals and that were in close contact with Brown, who did indeed test positive. So far, none of those other 5 players have tested positive or players from the franchise, but given the NFL's new protocol that I think just went into effect either this week or last week, guys who are deemed high risk, they essentially go into quarantine for at least 5 days
right.
From the last contact, which was Monday. And so for them, that would be starting with Tuesday. That's when you start your count of 5. And so they would be eligible to play Sunday because their count would be up as long as they continue to test negative. As we saw with the Titans situation earlier this year, the guys that were testing positive a week or 2 after the outbreak, had started. So you never really know for sure.
Right.
A few days later, but at least so far, the only guys that they have with positive tests were Damon Arnett and Trent Brown. But those other 5 guys are on the COVID list as well as they kind of wait and see, do those guys come up with positives or are they good and able to play Sunday? And even if they are able to play Sunday, they won't obviously have any more practice time.
Right. Yeah.
Monday.
Well, Tennessee will tell you don't need practice time. I mean, they were. They rolled Buffalo with no problem at all. You know what I mean? I was listening to one of our local sportscasters here on 620. They're partnered with Pewter Report, and Ian Beckles, a former Buccaneer, said his last year in Philadelphia, he didn't practice at all. I mean, he was an old veteran guy, right? So he didn't need it. I don't know how much these guys need it, but that's a pretty veteran offensive line. But I'm John Gruden. John Gruden likes guys to practice, that's for sure. And we'll see what happens. I hope. You think, well, if say they're missing 2 or 3 guys, that's an advantage to the Buccaneers pass rush and things like that. But I don't think the Buccaneers. I don't think most people want to see them going up against a team that might be missing several starters along the offensive line. Injuries happen, those kind of things happen. But in this situation, you want to see where you stack up, and I think having as many starters on both sides of the ball for both teams is the best way to do that. But I'm concerned. I was on a radio station with Las Vegas right before I did this, and Raider Nation Radio, I think it was, and they said that they're a little more concerned that this game even takes place on Sunday. We know it's moved from 8 o'clock Eastern time to 4, but they're concerned how it's even going to happen. The problem with that, Tashan, is you guys have already had the bye week, right? The Raiders have already had the bye week, so I don't have any idea how that would even work out. For them to try and reschedule that game unless they go to that week 17 type thing where they play, add a week on to week 18. I'm sorry, where they add a week on at the end of the year. I mean, what are your thoughts on if they don't play? How do they make up that game?
Yeah, I think part of the reason that they moved the time from Sunday Night Football to the 1 p.m. here Pacific time kickoff is it gives them a little bit more flexibility to move it and guarantees that they have that Sunday Night Football game. But I don't think they could still move it to Monday or potentially even Tuesday, like the Titans game that was played. And so they can still play it. I guess technically this week they just move it over a day or two. I don't think unless they have more positive tests come up. Let's say those 5 guys that are in quarantine,
right?
They have some positives among those guys, and I think we consider an outbreak. And at that point, you postpone the game. But if they just have guys that miss practice time, I think the league so far this season they haven't shown that that's going to be a reason why they prevent a game from being played. I think we've seen several teams at this point who came off of not being able to practice for a day or a couple of days, or having some players out that still had to go ahead and play anyway. And so if they did postpone for that reason, I think that would be set a new precedent that we haven't seen yet so far from the league. Right.
Yeah, that's what makes it so interesting is that we haven't, we are kind of creatures of habit, right? As reporters, like we want to know like what's happened based on precedent. And we really don't have precedent like to go off of and operate off of in this situation. So, that's why I think has led to a lot of speculation. Every time somebody gets a positive test or something, people like move the game, cancel the season, and kind of throwing stuff against the wall. But we don't really have a lot to go off of to know like what exactly will happen. I'm with you, Tashan, that I think that if there's no more positive tests, I think the game will be played as scheduled, and if there is, then it's, Monday, Tuesday, looking at that type of a scenario. And if there's an outbreak or something like that, then you're probably looking at massive rescheduling and retooling and maybe a week 18 or something. But that seems like last resort at this point. So plenty to think about and kind of mull over with the COVID situation there. But then there's also this little element of the football that actually occurs on the field that we want to talk about with you as well. I am in this place, Tashan, where I just am not really sure what the Raiders are offensively. I felt like I had them kind of figured out. Even after the Saints win, I was like, yep, this is pretty much the team I thought like they'll catch a couple teams, good scheme. And when they're executing, the protection's there. Carr's always been accurate in the short range, intermediate range. Like he's always been pretty good in that regard. When he's getting protected, they can hit passes in there. They can keep drives moving. They were converting third downs. And I was like, yep, I can see them running into, and the Saints weren't all that in my opinion. So I can understand this. Then they go out against the Chiefs and 4 of 6 on passes of 20 yards or more, 219 yards on those deep balls in that game, 2 touchdowns. I mean, they were absolutely making it rain against Kansas City. I haven't seen that from Derek Carr since he was first started out in the league. I'm just curious what your take is on the Raiders offense. Are they Carr is tied for 26th. I mentioned this yesterday on the show. He's tied for 26th in the league on deep ball attempts of 20 yards or more. So I know he's not doing it a ton, but is this offense moving toward that kind of a big play, explosive down the field? They certainly seem like they have the offensive weapons for it, but it's never really been Carr's proclivity as a quarterback. And then he comes out against Kansas City and he's absolutely dealing, throwing the ball down the field.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something they want to do more of, but a big issue this season is guys just haven't been healthy. I mean, Henry Ruggs, the third, he got hurt in week 1. Week 2, he played, but he was pretty limited. And then after that, he missed 2 games against the Patriots and the Bills. And that Chiefs game was his first game back. And we saw what happened, how good of a performance that he had. He really just blows the top off the defense. You have to respect his speed at all times when he's on the field. And that opens up more of those underneath passes that they're more so known for, and even the running game. And then also their other starting wide receiver, Brian Edwards, he got hurt against the Patriots. He's been out since then. But they have had Nelson Aguilar. He stepped up and played really well. I mean, surprisingly well.
Wow.
He was kind of overlooked as a free agent addition, but I think he's leading the team receiving-wise with 3 touchdowns so far, and even Zay Jones. And obviously, I think their best receiving target is actually, tight end Darren Waller, and one of the better tight ends in the league. And so, as you said, they have the weapons when it comes to the passing game to push it deep down the field. They just haven't had the guys that they would push the ball down the field to, primarily when it comes to Henry Ruggs. And the big issue on the offensive line as well, even before this fiasco this week, they've been beat up with injuries. I mean, Trent Brown, he got hurt the first series.
Right.
And then he missed, I believe, 2 or 3 games. And then Richie Incognito, he's still on injured reserve with an Achilles injury right now. And so they've been beat up on the offensive line, and you don't actually have a lot of time to throw when you're going against some of these defense. And obviously, the Bucs will be the best defense that they played so far this season. And so, it's kind of hard to say. Obviously, with this situation, I mean, if their offensive line is there, maybe they can put up the kind of performance they had against the Chiefs. But if the guys can't play this game, and they have no hope. But I do think this is they've proven so far, regardless of the opponent, that this is one of the best offenses in the league when it comes to efficiency and their ability to move the ball. I think they were good at moving the ball last year as well. They just couldn't put points up on the board. But this year, starting to finish drives and score early with some of those big plays that you spoke to, especially against the Chiefs.
I think if the Raiders did try and force the ball down the field with deeper shots, I think that kind of plays more into the Buccaneers' defensive hand a little bit, just because that allows time for the pass rush to get there. The Drew Brees of the world, even Nick Foles a couple weeks ago, kind of frustrated the Buccaneers pass rush with a little bit because he wasn't trying to push the ball down the field. He was getting the ball out pretty quick, and that's frustrating to a defense. But if they do play the John Gruden style, right, and the West Coast style offense where they do a lot of short intermediate type things, Todd Bowles has seen that, right, 1,000 times, and hopefully he'll have these guys a little better prepared scheme-wise than he did against the Bears, because that was just bad. As good as he had a game plan for Aaron Rodgers last week, I think they really missed an opportunity against Nick Foles and that Bears team a few weeks ago to have a good scheme. So it'll be interesting to see, kind of that chess match, because every week it's a chess match. That first 2 series for the Packers last week, they moved down the field 144 yards in the first quarter, and Todd Bowles made the adjustment. He out-coached Matt LaFleur at that point. Mm-hmm. So Gruden's a brilliant offensive mind. He's very good at countering moves. Todd Bowles is brilliant at it. This to me is a really fascinating coaching matchup as much as it is players on the field matchup.
Yeah, I think another huge piece of this is, can the Raiders get Josh Jacobs going again? He started out pretty fast the first 2 games of the season. The last 3 games he's been pretty limited. As you said, just dropping back to pass every time against this Bucs defense, eventually, that rush is going to get home. But if you got the running game going with Jacobs and Devontae Booker, who had a really good game last week against the Chiefs, or 2 weeks ago against the Chiefs, if they can get that running game going, I think it could take some of the pressure off of Carr to, have to push the ball down the field and, maybe getting too predictable with some of those underneath routes. And they like to target the running backs a little bit more this year. I think Josh Jacobs, as a rookie, he didn't really have a big impact in the passing game. And this season, he's been much improved in that area. And so, one thing about John Gruden, he's going to mix it up. You're going to get a lot of different personnel formations. They love using 2 and 3 tight ends. They love using their fullback, Alec Ingold. They throw go routes to him at certain times. And so he's going to mix it up as much as he possibly can, especially if they're a little bit compromised with the guys that they have out there.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. He's one of the only guys that I've seen, other than Green Bay, really, and obviously San Francisco, that will get their running backs vertical, and the Bucs saw that last week in Green Bay, dodged the bullet once from Aaron Jones. Carlton Davis made a heck of a play, but Gruden will do the same thing. And so it is schematically something you kind of have to be aware of. Very difficult, in my opinion, to kind of bet on what the Raiders are going to do offensively. But one place you can bet is over with our friends at MyBookie. Between the NFL, college ball, and MLB playoffs, there's no shortage of games to watch. And with thousands of lines available on all your favorite sports and events, you can turn your game day into payday with MyBookie. If you're the type of guy who likes to back the big favorites, consider putting a couple in a parlay for a much bigger payout. Not only do parlays make meaningless games exciting, but more importantly, they give you a chance to turn ordinary bets into a real moneymaker. And don't forget the underdogs. They have a ton of value. The thing about the NFL is that underdogs are never really dogs on Sunday. Every team truly has a chance to win, and you do too. Game spreads, championship futures, and player prop bets. It's never too late to get in on the action and start turning your sports knowledge into actual cash in your wallet. Sign up at MyBookie, and when you do, use our promo code Pewter, Pewter, Pewter. Use that promo code to claim a deposit match dollar for dollar all the way up to $1,000. It's a bonus designed to give you a little help and a head start on your winning season. That's promo code Pewter, Pewter, for you to claim your bonus when you make your deposit. Stacked UFC cards, presidential prop bets, and all the major sports and more. Sign up today to begin your winning season exclusively at my bookie. Tashan, one of the things.
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead, Mark.
John. I was just going to say when I was in Vegas a couple years ago, I put $20 down on the book. Actually, yes, I put $20 down for myself, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, put $20 down." By the way, he never gave me that $20. So if you're out there, Jeff, you still owe me that $20. But it was 21 or 25 to 1 odds.
Jeff's about to jump in the chat here.
I hope he does, and I'll give him my address because I could use that money right now. But I Vegas is an amazing place to bet, man. We went to the Westgate, and it was like a palace of betting and sports bookies and things like that. It was just really fascinating. Good news is you don't have to travel all the way to Vegas. You can just go to mybookie.ag, and it's like having your own personal betting palace at your fingertips. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you there. Wait. One more thing. I gotta say it again. When I went to Vegas, Tashan, you're absolutely right. I'd never been to Vegas before. We flew in about 10 o'clock. It was in June. Everybody said, "Oh, the heat." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. I'm from Florida." And the McCarran Airport, those doors slid open, right, where you walk out after you get your bags. And it was literally like when you check the brownies in the oven and you pull the oven down and that 350 hits you in the face. I'm not even exaggerating. That is the best description. People told me that was going to be like, and I didn't believe them. That is the best description. You do get kind of used to it. You don't really sweat. There is no humidity, but it takes a little bit of getting used to for sure. But anyway, all right, I'm sorry. We're wasting good quality time with our guest talking nonsense. Go ahead, Johnny.
No, it's not nonsense. It matters to the people. They know. The Florida people know. But I did want to ask you about Tashan. Is Darren Waller? You mentioned him briefly, and I think it's like when I'm talking to Bucs fans about like, wait, what's going to happen in this game? How do they match up in this game? I think they feel okay about the skill position players at wide receiver. They've done a good job for the most part of stopping the running game this entire season. Number one run defense in the NFL, I believe, and so it's been kind of good on all those fronts. But one area that it's kind of an unknown is, what do they do with these dynamic tight ends and a player like Darren Waller? I mean, Jared Cook, week 1, gave him some issues for sure. They did better against Noah Fant, although he did drop 3 passes in that game. So the box score maybe went a little bit favorable, and they didn't have good quarterbacking either. And so it's kind of been this question mark. It was even like Donald Parham for the Chargers, who's coming off their practice squad, splits out wide, which Darren Waller can do. He'll play wide. He'll play in the slot. And he's catching a touchdown pass on a corner for the Bucs. And so it has been like a tough slot for them to be able to match up against, is that tight end, especially the hybrid kind of uber athletic tight end like Darren Waller is. What kind of challenges does he present from you watching him? And has any team been able to devise any type of a scheme to take him away this season?
Yeah, I think you talked to Arteta Nguyen. He wrote a story kind of highlighting the best defenses so far this season. And though he had the Bucs ranked number 1, one of the weaknesses that he did have for them is kind of how their linebackers play in pass coverage. And obviously Waller is a terrible matchup if you struggle in that area. I mean, he's basically a 6'6" wide receiver. As you said, he'll split out wide, as a traditional, tight end. He's lined up in the backfield at the H-back position. They've had him lined up in like an off-kilter offensive line where he's left tackled and he goes out for a pass formation. So they move him all across the field, and I think he's top 3, top 5 tight end in the league. The one team that probably shut him down the most was the Patriots, which probably isn't that surprising since that's Bill Belichick stuff. Taking away your best player or your best weapon, and they bracketed him double coverage. They had situations where they made him quite double coverage and then they fell off of it, and so. He might have been open, but Carr looked somewhere else because it looked like he was going to be off the field. And so, I think it made it a little bit easier for them to do that because Ruggs didn't play that game. Edwards got hurt, and so the Raiders were a little bit compromised at their skill position. I think this week, with them having Ruggs and Aguilar and Hunter Renfrow from the slot, who I haven't mentioned yet, and Waller, that makes it a little bit tougher if you're going to attempt to double somebody like Waller. So he's a mismatch, and if you're leaving him one-on-one with a linebacker, chances are Carr's gonna be throwing it his way.
His story is just crazy. I mean, just a crazy, awesome story. I love it. I've seen interviews with him, not only just the ability to, him working and currently still, as he'll always say, in that process of overcoming drug and alcohol addiction and just doing that in and of itself and being able to get clean and get in that position being amazing enough. But now you are literally so good at a position you didn't even play in college in the NFL that Bill Belichick, the greatest defensive mind of all time, is scheming his whole defensive game plan to take you away. Like, just think about where Darren Waller's come in 2 years, it's inspiring, but also it's just like from just a pure football perspective, if you don't know that much about his story, it's crazy. This guy wasn't even a tight end, and now he's out here like literally making the greatest defensive minds in football rearrange how they go about running a defense. Crazy to me.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, that's what made me feel bad about, what happened with his fundraiser and kind of the attention that got taken off of that. Because like I said, I looked there because I'm like, this guy's story is amazing, and
right
as he overcome his struggles personally, but now he's making an effort to give back to others, and particularly the youth here in Vegas, and trying to help them turn their lives around. They're battling some of the same issues that he had. And so obviously that was the focus of the event. They got lost a little bit, but yeah, his story is amazing, man. He's probably in that aspect the most interesting guy on the team. And even though he's older, he's 27, 28, and so this probably is his peak, his prime years. He's like I say, he's still figuring out this position. It's something that is new to him and being in this large of a role. And so he's gonna, as he faces more defenses that key in on him, like the Patriots did, he'll learn to work around it and adjust to it. But this is something that he's really only been a starting tight end for 2 years. He's still kind of learning as he goes to a degree. But he's incredibly talented, and he's going to be somebody that pretty much I would consider every week their number one receiving option, no matter which defense they're going up against.
Yeah, I think that, man, when you look at this Raiders offense just as a whole, it's like hard for us to even unpack that much, because you are thinking about, in the back of your head, kind of like, what if they have to go without this offensive line, and what, how much does that change everything else that's going on? So feel like we've touched on that as much as we kind of can, and then we'll just kind of, Bucs fans that are listening and watching, Raiders fans that are listening and watching, we'll kind of keep you updated as much as we can, obviously, about what's going on with this offensive line, this COVID situation, obviously. But let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball if we can, Tashan. We've said some positive. The Raiders have excitement, positivity in the offensive side of the ball. There's optimism there, not only about the players individually, but also the scheme and the ability to hit peaks like they did against Kansas City. What if those can be sustained? There's a lot of excitement around the Raiders on the offensive side of the ball. What about the defensive side of the ball, man? I mean, I know you're laughing already, but it's like, man, I mean, I had a whole list of stats that I read yesterday. Maybe you can't see those in the light, but on the podcast, and I was like, I don't know what this team is good at defensively. I mean, I think they are 8th in pressure percentage per Pro Football Reference, but every other category in the league that I kind of looked at, they're at best 16th and almost always in the bottom 4 or 5. This is a defense that Mike Mayock and John Gruden have built. They've picked most of these guys. They've drafted them, signed some of them in free agency. I know Nick Kwiatkowski is still just working his way back into it, and he's been an upgrade. But Corey Littleton, some of these guys are guys that they like handpicked and were like, we want you to come here and play and help turn this defense around. And here we are again, and it just doesn't seem like it's really coming together for them. What do you see on that side of the ball? What are the major issues? And does the talent there, is this a unit that can be turned around?
Yeah, I think through the first 4.5 games of the season, it had been a complete disaster for the defense. I mean, I know they got a lot of praise for the Chiefs game, but they did give up 24 points in the first half. And, obviously they held them on 8 points in the second half, and it was big in that victory, but they didn't exactly get off to the greatest start in that game either. I think it's been issues at every level. Up front, I mean, it's been really disappointing. They before last week, they had a really good game against the Chiefs, but they'd had one of the worst pass rushes in the league up until that point. One of their big signings, this offseason was defensive tackle Malik Collins. They signed him away from the Cowboys, and they touted him as the key of the defense, and he had been pretty much missing in action through the first 4 games. He was out last game with an injury, and Maurice Hurst, the backup defensive tackle, had actually been out playing him. And Cleveland Farrell, he's somebody that's gotten a lot of criticism since drafted him number 4 overall. He had pretty slow start to the season. He finally had a good game against the Chiefs, but Max Crosby had really been their only defensive lineman who was consistently getting pressure and getting to the quarterback and being able to bring him down. And, when you have that lack of a pass rush, that puts a lot of pressure on your secondary. They have an extremely young secondary. Trayvon Mullen, he's been really good this season, but he is a second-year player. Jonathan Abrams, a second-year player, but he only played 1 game as a rookie, so he's basically still a rookie. Other cornerback, Damon Arnett, was a rookie, and then he got hurt, and so now they're having a backup cornerback out there. LaMarcus Joyner, he's somebody, like you said, was one of those guys that they paid a lot of money. He hasn't played that well with nickelback. He had been a safety earlier in his career, and he's been kind of struggling.
Right. From Florida State.
Saying bad things about him, but
no, I get it, man. Yeah, he has not had a good year this year.
Yeah, even linebacker. I mean, this was supposed to be finally the year that the Raiders, after like years and years of never having good linebacker play, Corey Littleton, he's the highest player on the defense, and he's been pretty underwhelming. He's missed a lot of tackles this year. He hasn't been that great in coverage. Travis Kelce gave him fits 2 weeks ago. I mean, Travis Kelce does that to a lot of linebackers, including some of the best in the league. But even against lesser tight ends and receivers, Littleton had been great. Kwiatkowski, he'd been pretty good, but he had a pectoral injury in the first game of the season. So it's just whether it's been injury or guys underperforming that they paid a lot of money or made a big investment in at all three levels, they just had issues across the defense. And I don't know if it's I think it's a mix of both. A lot of the heat goes to defense coordinator Paul Gunther and his system and his scheme, and is he just not a good defensive coach? But I think they still have a talent deficit on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think going into the season, I think the expectation was for the defense to be maybe an average unit or okay, but it was never going to be a good unit. There's just hope that with the additions that they made, both through the draft and free agency, that they can at least be serviceable after being bad for so long. But so far this season, they've just been bad again. And obviously going up against Tom Brady and the Bucs and all the weapons that they have is going to be another challenging week. And I think the big key to it is going to be whether or not they can sustain that pressure that they found against the Chiefs. They're getting some guys back this week. Carl Nassib, who got hurt during the Chiefs game, he should be coming back. Lee Collins will be coming back. And Mo Hurst, he's back off the COVID list. And so they're getting some help back. And they had a lot of plays against Patrick Mahomes where they got pressure and got in the backfield, but
right.
Does Mahomes things and scrambled around and finds a way to get the ball down.
Brady's not going to do that.
What? He's not? No?
Brady's not doing 360s in the pocket, running in the opposite side of the field. So some of those pressures could turn into sacks. It's just a matter of, are they winning those one-on-one battles at the line of scrimmage at the same level that they did against the Chiefs? I think that's really their only hope of slowing down this Bucs offense on Sunday.
And the Buccaneer offensive line has been really up and down. I mean, they'll have a great game, and then they'll have a really poor game, and maybe an average game. But last week was a good game. If they can play like that and keep Tom Brady upright, with, like you said, the weapons they have going up against the defense that's really mediocre stat-wise, it's certainly a huge advantage for the Buccaneers. But I'm an old guy, as you can see, Tashan. I'm like 150 years old, and but I mean, I'm one of those guys, man. If you can block, the team that blocks the best and tackles the best has a really good chance of winning football games. And so, I still believe football is won and lost a lot of the time in the trenches. And if the Buccaneers are going to lose this game, it's going to be because they're going to have an offensive output kind of like that Bears game where the offensive line played poorly and they just didn't score enough points, because they should be able to move the football. Again, if you're just looking at it on paper, there shouldn't be any reason why the Buccaneers can't move the football against the Raiders defense. But there's one way they can stop them, and that's getting pressure on Tom Brady. So hopefully for Buccaneer fans, the offensive line is the Packers game type offensive line as opposed to the Bears a couple weeks ago when Tom was running for his life and got almost died in that game.
Yeah, that's been the key for anybody who's had success against the Bucs offense. The Bucs have either shot themselves in the foot, and the only other than that, with penalties and drops, and other than that, when they've struggled offensively, it's really been when teams have been able to get pressure. Sometimes that's blitzing. Sometimes the offensive line, like you mentioned, I'm probably more optimistic on their performance this year than you maybe, but I agree in the Bears game, the second half, at times when the offense stalled, it was almost always because protection. Now the Bears are an elite pass rush group. The Raiders haven't been an elite pass rush group, but still, Tashan, what do you see from this group? You mentioned the last time they were out on the field was their best time producing pressure, and they have produced pressure this season. From my observation, I say, even though they may not have an elite pass rusher, they may not be super skilled individually, the one thing I see is just guys that bust their tail. And so if the quarterback holds the ball at all, they can I would say they get pressure. They might not get pass rush wins per se in under 2.5 seconds, but they seem like a group that can get pressure. If you hold the ball or mess around in the backfield, they're just going to keep working. It seems like they've at least drafted guys that you would, quote unquote dogs on that side of the ball, it seems.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you have a Rod Marinelli coach front, your effort is not going to be an issue. The guys are
right.
They just, and part of it is that they only really rush forward. They don't really blitz that often. So you're putting a lot of pressures on guys, not only to win one-on-one matchups, but to win 2-on-1 matchups. And
good point.
The talent is there, and it's just a matter of, I think one issue that they had particularly against the Bills when they had that loss, where they were really trying to contain Josh Allen and keep him in the pocket, avoid him from hurting him with his legs. And, in doing so, they weren't really getting after him. They were kind of keeping him boxed in, but he had all day to throw because he had a clean pocket. Against the Chiefs, they just kind of let it loose. Said, all right, forget it. We're just going to rush like crazy and try to get him. And in the first half, there were some plays where, it's Patrick Mahomes. He's going to escape. He's going to pick up some first downs with his legs. He's going to, find somebody open down the field. You're going to get burned sometimes, but eventually they just stuck with it, trusted their system, and it paid off for them in the second half. And so that's the same mentality I expect for them to bring with this game, is to be more aggressive, simplify things, and just get after it. You're not always going to win, obviously. Sometimes just get beat, like, one-on-one matchups, or like I said, two-on-one matchups. You're always going to beat 4 with 5, right?
Yeah.
Quick enough, especially going up against a quarterback like Tom Brady, who isn't mobile, but he throws the ball and gets rid of the ball so quickly that he doesn't really give you the opportunity to get to him. And then the other thing is the Raiders' run defense has been pretty bad this season as well. So if the Bucs are moving the ball well on the ground, then that becomes even less of a factor when defensive ends can't just rush, straight and not worry about it. They have to worry about the running game as well. If the Bucs are able to find some success in that area, then that could also be another thing that slows the Raiders down.
Tashan, you mentioned protection a minute ago. You know who else is very good at protection in the Tampa Bay area? Well, you're not from Tampa, so you don't know. But Breyer-Greaves Insurance Agency, they're a proud sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. They've been in business for over 30 years. They're a 3-generation family-owned business and award-winning agency who can take care of your home, auto, boat, life, flood, commercial, anything, maybe even a nuclear bomb disaster maybe there's an unexploded bomb in the desert, Tashan. I don't know, but I'm sure Breyer-Greaves can find some sort of coverage if that's the case. But anyway, we want our readers to give them a call, because really there's nobody out there. Not everybody needs a new car. Everybody doesn't always need a lawyer, but everybody needs some type of insurance. And that's where Breyer-Greaves can help you out. 813-876-4166. Again, 813-876-4166. Give Breyer a call. They're big Buccaneer fans. They love the team. They've been season ticket holders. They're excited to talk Buccaneers football. And in the meantime, while you're chatting football, let them check over your policies. Let them see what you have now and see if they can save you some money. Maybe they can't, but it's a free call, and or meet them in person in their office off of Henderson. Again, one more time, 813-876-4166. Anyway, hopefully there's no unexploded nuclear bombs left in the desert. Tashan, you're going to have to do this sometime. I'm just kidding. Don't do it. We went to the Atomic Energy and Nuclear Bomb Museum in Vegas. Don't ask me why. It's a long story. I don't, look, I guess if there's nothing else left to do in Vegas, if you've gambled away all your money, go to the Atomic Bomb Museum. It's kind of interesting, but anyway, I did learn one thing. They had parties in Vegas, right, where you would watch the tests. I mean, they were, 50, 60 miles away, but they would go out and they would have watch parties for testing nuclear weapons, which is just mind-boggling to me. Anyway, all right. I don't know why I'm talking about that, man. I'm just,
I haven't reached that part of the pandemic yet. I'm not that bad.
I was going to say,
no,
you're
not
going to
yet.
be quarantined a lot longer to get there, man.
And we paid for it. We actually took money out of our wallet and handed it to the people to walk in.
Stop giving them details, man. This is just making it look worse for you.
we were visiting with some family who thought that we would enjoy it. And I pray they don't listen to this podcast, because I probably won't get a birthday or a Christmas gift. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Tashan, we do want to let you go. I know you want to get to this Eagles-Giants. We were recording on a Thursday night a little bit before this Eagles-Giants barn burner, where there might be somebody healthy left from the original starting lineup, maybe 2 or 3 players we got to get our eyes on tonight. So I know we want to let you get to that game and be able to check that out and watch that, but do want to get your prediction for this game before we let you go for this Bucs-Raiders game. If it happens Sunday, as expected, let's say for the hypothetical of this prediction, the line is back for the Raiders. The offensive line is back, and Jonathan Abrams back, but they obviously won't have practiced. So that may kind of influence things. But your thoughts on how this game could go and what you think the final score will be maybe at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's been tough for me to work out a score because I have no idea who's about to play. But under your scenario, I think I saw the Bucs winning. I want to say we can go 34-28. I still think the Raiders offense will be able to find some success. They've been able to do that in games this season when they've been without. Obviously, Trent Brown is not going to play in this game regardless. Mm-hmm. And Richie Incognito is going to be out as well. And they've had games where they've been without both of those guys and been able to move the ball well and score some points. So I'm pretty confident in their offense at this point. I think no matter what, their offense is going to be able to move the ball and put some points up on the board. But I just have zero faith really in the defense, particularly going against a team as talented as the Bucs. With Damon Arnett still being out as on the outside cornerback, and Abram not having practice time. They've had some really bad struggles at free safety. And I'm not always sold on the pass rush yet. I know they're coming off a really strong performance, but I don't know if they can do that again, particularly against – I think the Bucs offensive line is probably a little bit better than the Chiefs offensive line with some of the advantages they've had. So I just think the defense isn't able to slow down the Bucs enough, but I do think the Raiders fight and they're valiant in this game, which I think, coming off the circumstances that they've had this week, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. So,
right.
And, coming out at 3-3 after this one, but I still think they're a team that will end up contending for one of those wild card spots later on this year.
He is Tashan Reed, ladies and gentlemen, covers The Athletic for 6 months now for the Raiders. Does a great job covering that team. Make sure you give him a follow on Twitter if you get the chance, at TASHAN. Last name is Reed, REED. Make sure you give him a follow. Always lots of great stuff and thoughts on there. He throws out music takes. I've seen your show takes. I've seen you talk about the boys a little bit, and I've been very intrigued. I got to grab you and chat with you about that show because I have thoughts, man, on that show as well. What a wild ride that is. So we'll definitely keep catching up and stay in touch, but enjoy the game on Sunday if it happens on Sunday, man, and keep killing it out there with some great work. We really appreciate you giving us some time.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate y'all having me on.
And
absolutely,
I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate your FSU coverage, man. I know it was it was tough duty being stuck in Tallahassee for a couple of years, but man, you did a good job. It definitely it probably built some thick skin too, dealing with FSU Twitter. We can be a little rough sometimes, but we appreciate you, man. Thank you.
But yeah, for us on the Pewter Report podcast, we will be back on after the game. Actually, it's not going to be a night game now, so you won't even have to stay up that late and listen to us. You can get to us before. We'll be on at some point 10:30, probably after those pressers and everything gets out of the way after the post game. We'll jump on. We'll be live again, YouTube, Facebook. Again, if you don't subscribe to us, go over to our YouTube, Pewter Report TV, subscribe. If you've subscribed already and you're having trouble getting the notifications, we changed some of the settings. So just unsubscribe and then subscribe again and select that bell and get the notifications for when we go live. We'll be going live 4 times a week, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're talking Raiders. We're talking Bucs all this week, so go back and listen to the podcast. We've had some great – yesterday, Scott and I broke down the matchups in depth and had a lot of fun with it. And so, I think it's been a great time, and we appreciate y'all subscribing. We've added hundreds of y'all in the recent days, and we appreciate all y'all supporting us moving forward as well. So thank y'all so much for listening to another edition of the Pewter Report Podcast. Out.